Well, welcome everybody. Refresh Friday with Jon Berna and Jeff Kirshner and Alex Snyder. Of course, I'm not so sure Jeff's really here.
I'm not. I'm totally not.
He's having some connection issues, which is really fun because he's also the main host. So hopefully we can stay tuned and up through this next hour or so. So anyway, normally we do a little housekeeping and talk about a little news, but housekeeping at the moment, Dealer Refresh is we're doing some things with the ad server at the moment. It's kind of choking it, so it's a little bit slow, but don't worry, it'll come back to full power soon. And in the news, not much, which basically means NADA is around the corner and everyone's holding the news for the show. So let's jump in and talk about Jon. So Jon is what we're going to call Dr. Truth or DR Truth, D.R.Truth. And the reason for that is because Jon has quite a cool consortium of data. So to put that in perspective, I'm going to read from this list here. He's combined web analytics, CRM data feeds, DMS service information, DMS financials, traditional DMS feeds outside of all that, third-party inventory information, along with the dealer's inventory data, and then wraps it up with all kinds of non-traditional data channels to explore some pretty badass ways of looking at data. So it was a bit of a mouthful, and Jon, correct me if I missed any of that.
It's weird that you read it like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's how I would have said it, but no.
I think I'm back on board. Sorry, guys.
All right. So, Jon, what do you do then?
So our approach at Driven Data was to create a universal warehouse for all dealership data in an enterprise way. So combining the leads and appointment data from CRM, the sales and service, transactional data from the DMS, the inventory data, third-party data, Google Analytics, AdWords, Facebook, TV, radio, and really just put it into one warehouse that's consistent regardless of who your providers are. And so we're able to then kind of take that data, push it into a machine learning layer, as well as create, endpoints that are consistent regardless of who the providers are.
Okay, that's a cleaner way to say it, I think. You've got more practice at that than I do.
I've done a couple demos. So I've had to explain it a few times. Yes.
How do you gather the data from traditional?
So we did an integration with one of the larger media buying platforms, Strata.
Yeah.
So for TV and radio spot data, we can partner with the agency and collect that data from them.
Interesting. And what are you seeing from that data?
Well, we did.
Does it make sense for a dealership to do traditional?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
I
mean,
still,
that's a big message.
I mean, we can see the difference
from a branding standpoint, or what?
I mean, for example, this is how I know, there's definitely an impact. I mean, we've seen the difference from month to month campaigns where they're spending the same amount in TV.
Traditional campaigns.
Yeah.
TV, print, radio. Can you?
So we're essentially
break it down. What's better?
So we're bringing in TV, cable, and radio, and to say which is better, we assign a cost per attributed visit, so we can at the program level see which program performs. It's obviously different from store to store, from month to month.
Store to store, or region to region.
Store to store. I mean, they're creative in their strategy, and
so it comes down to what they do from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the difference from one month to the next, where website traffic really responds to a change in creative. So there's still
that's interesting. What do you mean?
What do I mean by there's a difference?
Well, you're saying change the creative, and that equals more
Well,
traffic. Like,
yeah. So we're establishing the attributed visits based on two things: the impression strength of the spots relative to the spots around it. So the example is that way, you don't give more credit to Gilligan's Island than live sports, right? So that's kind of one. And then the other is the time decay between when that spot ran and when the session occurred, right? So those two things blend together, establish our attributed visits. And we can see that from 1 month to the next, the spike when the strategy essentially changes. And so not necessarily just even from a buying standpoint, but obviously creative. I mean, that makes a big difference.
So do you think it's more creative than the content of the message?
Well, I mean, I think creative affects every program, right? So if you're going to have a big increase, I think that's the first place I would look to, because it affects every place you're distributing that message.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we're glad to have you here today. Obviously, that's a good start. We've got a few more like that.
You said you're going to be gentle.
What's that?
You said you're going to be gentle.
Sorry.
I know Jeff's already thrown doozies out there.
Sorry.
Oh, man. Whew.
You have so much data. You have so much information to provide. It's like it's hard not to ask you these questions. Yeah. That's what makes you who you are. I mean, it's amazing.
This is how Jon became DR Truth for us. Yeah.
Straight up.
Took one look at his product,
whether he likes it or not.
Right.
Yeah, I was not a fan at first, and
become a fan, bro. Become a fan.
I have trust in Alex.
Oh, that's scary. I'm not sure I do.
We'll see how long that lasts.
So, in all fairness to everyone watching, we did come up with a slew of questions for Jon that he was able to prepare numbers for before the show. And we're going to run through a bunch of those, probably not all of them, but you'll be able to find them after the show in the Dealer Refresh forums, where DR Truth will be involved and able to answer any questions you might have that he is able to answer. So
are there any questions he can't answer?
Yeah.
You might have some data agreements.
I have a question. Why did I agree to this?
So look, Caleb's already got a DR Truth hashtag for you.
That's my boy.
Straight up.
And Quentin Joe's already mind blown. We've got some questions from Joe for you.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him now.
You had to work extra hard for Joe.
So let's fire into one of these questions. Yeah. So internet leads. Yeah. Do they decrease in value or plateau in value after a certain number in a month?
So the answer is yes. We looked at what we would define. We looked at it in two ways: showroom opportunities and what we would call non-showroom, which is basically phone and internet, right? And so what you typically, when you're looking at the relationship between sales and leads, when something doesn't fall off, it's a linear relationship where it continues to go up as you add volume. When things start to trail off, that's called a logarithmic function, right? Where there's a plateauing effect. And so in non-showroom lead type, we see that roughly around 55, 60 opportunities, you start seeing a trailing effect. And this is with a lot of leads. So it's not, all kinds of salespeople, different process. That's pretty universal, right around 55, 60. Now, some of these salespeople could be hybrid sales associates where they have showroom opportunities as well, which obviously influences that.
Right. Okay. So per person, how many, you think about that, back in my BDC days, I mean, we were putting 120 to 200 opportunities on each BDC member. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I wish I'd known the right number was half of that.
But I almost think today there's less and less BDC and more hybrid process, right? Is that what you guys see? That's kind of what I hear.
I don't know. I don't know that I think there's a trend back to the hybrid, which in my opinion is what it should be. But
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's where it's at.
But there's still a lot of BDCs out there.
There are. Yeah.
Yep.
The hybrid's hard though. It really is, because you've got to keep everyone trained. And there's this thing that I like to coin lead fatigue.
Yeah.
And when you have a BDC, they don't quite have that. They're more just get it done, more rhythmatic.
Sure.
Whereas when you're pushing it out to the sales people, the hybrid style, they become lead fatigue. They're like, they start pre-qualifying the lead.
So I would say, within the data though, there's dimensions to it, right? So there's people that are BDC associates, there's salespeople. And so if you were to split that between salespeople and BDC, you would see the lead fatigue expressed in the salespeople, but not probably as much in the BDC, where that logarithmic function or that plateauing effect wouldn't occur until later on, because they have more, productivity, more time to be productive, as opposed to, have non-productivity related tasks.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, as a sales agent, I would definitely put more emphasis on my floor ups than those.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. So next question we got for you. So how often is a repeat shopper coming out of the service department?
Qualify that. Like, what do you mean?
So how often is a repeat shopper, so a repeat customer to the dealership buying a car?
Service or sales?
To sales.
Okay.
The repeat car buyer was using the service department prior to buying the car or buying another car.
So we looked at this to find it just like you're saying, somebody that had 2 or more purchases, and what number of times on average do they visit the dealership, versus somebody that just purchased once. And so the purchase once for our data set was 3.79. 2 or more purchases was 4.06. So that's an increase of 7.2% in terms of service visits after the sale, which I would almost consider to be a wash.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not what I never would have thought that.
So what does that tell us?
Well,
who cares about service? No, just kidding.
Is that mean is that OEM specific?
I just did it for everything. All new, used, all in. Right?
I mean, each OEM has a little bit of, they have a different protocol and how they go after. I know, again, I'm with a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and we do a lot of different things to go after that customer. And that being said, like a typical Benz owner only comes into the dealership once a year.
Yeah, we saw that by brand too. I mean, when we looked at the by brand service visits, domestics had more than luxury brands.
So where are they going?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Where are
you
they?
Don't have that data.
Cars.
These cars are so good they don't have to service them anymore, huh?
That's totally not the reason.
It reminds me of a 96,000 mile Hyundai Accent we traded one time years ago, and they had never changed the oil in it, and the damn thing was still running just fine.
So this is my hypothesis. Right. So 2017, CDK did a dealer study survey, right? 40% of customers in the year within their warranty expiring defected to ISPs, independent service providers. It's a little known fact, but Walmart has 2,500 service facilities in the country right now, powered by Walmart Labs, which is like the Amazon technology division of Walmart that uses their customer data to drive loyalty or direct marketing campaigns right into their service centers. And then if you go, you look at these ISPs and you see the content, the experience that they offer from a digital marketing strategy, it's better than the manufacturers. It's pretty, especially at that, 3-year, 4-year mark where they know they're high value. That's where they're absolutely going after them.
So on this question, we do have a question from the audience. Joey Little is asking what the percentage means. So, he's looking at 4.06 and 3.79. Are those percentages, or are these numbers out of your system?
Yeah, that's out of us. So that's what we see. And of course, it's going to be different for individual dealers and different data sets. But the percentage increase is 7.2% from a single to a repeat. So a repeat number of service visits is 4.06, single it's 3.79. So we're just saying it's a 7% increase.
Okay. So yeah, he says he just got a little distracted, but it's good to clarify that.
Oh, okay.
All right. But 7% is the takeaway number.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Looks like we lost Jeff. Thank God. So, I don't know. Maybe he got some hairspray on the camera. He's gonna kill me later.
All the hair jokes. We got like 5 of them lined up.
Yep. Let's just dog on Jeff now. So anyway, while I'm waiting on Jeff he's sending me some text. Let's dive into the next one. Sales forecasting.
Yes.
I mean, you seem to have gotten that down to a science over marketplaces, regions, and even seasons. How do you nail that?
We've been working on tier 3 dealer specific forecasting for over 2 years now. In the first year that we did it, our accuracy rate was within about 3.5%. Last year it was within 1.9%. That's overall. We had some hurricanes obviously at the end of last year and a lot of dealerships in the Southeast, which had it not been for that, I think we would have been even more accurate. So we've really tried to look at a time series forecast. So we don't use things like the manufacturers would do or feasibility study would do, where they look at unemployment or they look at those macro factors. We look at the dealership. We look at their seasonality going back as far as we can. We look at their trend and how they've kind of improved as of late and what's that trend mean. And then we forecast about 6 months out.
So how much trending data do you need to really get accurate?
7 years, 5 to 7 years.
Okay. And you're pulling that basically out of just the DMS feed.
Yeah,
right?
when we take the historical file, and then we've done open points though, where we've built forecasting models for open points where we'll take the market and we'll look at how the market has performed, and that'll be our, seasonality. And so that oftentimes actually can be a pretty good way for a dealer to look at it and say, this is the real market seasonality. Mine's going to be different, but this is what the market is.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, does anything maybe fluff the numbers a little bit, mess it up at all?
Well, so the thing that we do, we forecast on total units and we don't break out between new and used. And that can be frustrating in conversations. But the reason we do this is because there's this massive lurking variable that affects 20 to 30%, I think, of sales, and that's the desk. So who's working the desk, what their preference is, I mean, that definitely has a big impact. In steering a customer from a new product to a used product, base or used to new based on hitting stair-step incentives, that has a big influence, obviously.
So yeah, so if the new car manager is off at 6 and the used car manager is on the 12 to 9 shift, we're selling used cars at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
No matter what they came in on. That makes sense. Well, how much of a variation can that be?
So the accuracy rate really drops when we split them. So it got to the point where we just decided it's probably best for now based on and we're using, our own custom machine learning. We've had to really tune this to get it accurate. And that's all we care about, is getting it accurate. Giving a dealer a kind of an insight as to, if you don't change anything, this is where you're going to end up So maybe we should take a proactive approach and try to change some things.
Okay. Well, when you told me that originally, that kind of blew my mind, but it made so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe Pistel, who is commenting furiously over here, Machine Gun Joe, we like to call him Uncle Joe, but he's more Machine Gun commenting Joe. He is dying to hear about the differences between organic and paid website traffic.
Yeah, so let me pull that one up. What question was that? Okay, so we have a value, like high value users. It's a metric that we use. We call it QWAB, quality website traffic. And it's basically three things. So it's an advanced user segmentation. So everybody can do this. You can go into Google Analytics yourself and build this. You don't need our product to do this. But basically it's three things. You got to visit a website 4 times in a month. You have to be on there for over 400 seconds, and you have to have 7 page views. So
400 seconds.
Yeah, that's how you set it up. 400 seconds in the aggregate, right? So it can be multiple sessions.
Oh, okay. So it's a total of okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
That kind of gives you a target or a value of how many people are engaged with your site, right? And then we look at what channels created that. And so organic versus paid, when we looked at, we take all this Google Analytics data, we put it into our warehouse, and then we kind of compare it to a bunch of different things. And so there's a 43% on the average store, the number of people that meet that criteria for organic is 43% higher than paid in a given month. So we took the average of all dealerships and looked at what that increase was. Organic versus paid, it was 43%.
Wow, that's a big difference. So, and it is a little bit of a duh statement to think that somebody who's coming in from organic is going to spend more time and do more because they were searching you out,
right?
Versus clicking on an offer and coming over and trying to find that offer really fast and then continue on their shopping path if they didn't like the offer. Or just converting to a lead, hopefully, if they did. So that makes sense. It starts to lend to a question that you probably can't answer. We probably don't want to answer, is whether or not there's value in continuing to spend money on SEO monthly. And it sounds like there is. You look at it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're Switzerland on that decision, obviously. But the thing that I think about, from a dealership standpoint, is just having your marketing message and you're creating consistent and everywhere. If dealerships really focus on that as a fundamental marketing tenet, all too often we see campaigns that aren't started till the 15th of the month. They're not on their Facebook page until the 17th of the month, and they're not. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think in the aggregate has a big impact on organic search traffic. And it's something that if your marketing message is really prepared a month in advance, you're going to have more traffic than somebody that does it during the month. And that's a free thing that just operationally a dealership can do to increase, I think, their organic search traffic.
That's a crazy idea. Plan ahead?
It's one of the hardest things for a dealership to do. And this argument that the incentives are we have to wait for that, I think that's a false statement. I think we should know what our strategy is. Tactics and strategy are different, Tactics are the incentives. Strategy is what we're going to do that month. So you need to have your strategy and your creative, and then insert those incentives, I think, and have your own, approach well in advance.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And to call that a free service to get yourself better results is, yeah. So Joe is throwing another question out before we march on to one of Joe's big questions we got prepared. but he's wondering if the QWeb change. So this QWeb score changes from desktop to mobile.
I think we'll have to put that in the forums. I don't have it in front of me, but that's a good
good
question.
one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would expect my hypothesis, and I think Joe's probably is that engagement on desktop is probably better than mobile, but I'd want to kind of validate that.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to another one of Joe's questions. So, have you witnessed anything that encourages dealers to change the price on their cars more often?
So the way that we answered this, and I don't know, this is, if I witness anything to, are we talking about the price change and the effect on engagement and third parties? Is that what we
Yes.
So we kind of did this, we had this crazy idea. We wanted to take the feeds of all of the daily changes and track them in our database. So anytime a price changes, we store it. Every single car, every dealer we've had for over a year now, about a year and 2 months, I'd say, we've tracked the day-to-day change of each price and then the day-to-day change of each VDP count. So now we can then go back and kind of do this analysis. So what's the influence on, changing the price in terms of VDP count? Well, there's actually a probability that the VDPs can go up, and there's actually a probability that the VDPs can go down. And so it's actually different between, we really did in this analysis, did it between AutoTrader and Cars.com. So there's a difference in that probability between the two, which I think, Alex, you probably have a few ideas for that. But the thing that was interesting is that if you make an initial change in Cars.com right away, it just 50%, I think is what it was, increase in VDP. The probability that your VDPs are going to go up from Cars.com is 55%, just from a 1% change in price.
Wow.
And I think that's usually the initial price change, right? So the majority of price changes are, so we looked at, in this analysis, we did 121,000 price changes. And for those in the 1% level, that was about 55% probability increase.
And you saw, so Cars.com had a pretty big impact from a price change, but anything with AutoTrader?
Yeah, with AutoTrader, it was pretty consistent. And really, when you start getting to about 8-9%, that's when it really starts to take off. And so it kind of has more of a linear kind of increase. And obviously, it has a opposite effect on a decrease. So the more you decrease the price of the car, the more VDPs obviously you have over time. It is an increase, as a probability increase, and then the VDPs as a probability go down over time as well for AutoTrader.
Okay, that's interesting. So basically what you're saying is Cars.com gets a larger impact from smaller price changes, and AutoTrader requires a larger price change to see the same kind of impact?
Yeah, I mean, but remember, the thing that I just wanted to point out, the big difference, which is that there's an initial shot in the arm by making that first price change with Cars. It still is pretty consistent and comparable. It's probably, it doesn't increase at the same rate as AutoTrader does. But for Cars.com, the probability that the VDP count's going to go down does decrease very consistently. So it's just, I guess it's a little bit more normalized is what I would say. And AutoTrader kind of ramps up a little bit more the more aggressive you are.
Now, an interesting thing I found, like 10 years ago, and it's probably still in play a bit today, but at Checkered Flag, we found that our cars with an average price of $22,000 or higher perform better on Cars.com, whereas our cars with $16,000 average price or lower perform better on AutoTrader.com. And I wonder if that has any bearing in what you're seeing, whether it's something contained in a price range.
Yeah, I mean,
not necessarily an Auto Trader or Cars.com thing.
Yeah, I absolutely believe there's another dimension here besides just being Auto Trader and Cars.com. It's the cars themselves and those intervals, as you mentioned. So I think the next step in this analysis would be to say, let's do the same percentage change, but then apply that to, we'll categorize or bin, as we call it, the price in intervals of, say, 5,000 of a car, right? So now that each individual car group in that price range of, say, 5,000 to 10,000, all the way up, what's the impact of a price change at those? And then you would see that expressed probably.
Yeah. I have a feeling you're definitely onto something there.
Yep.
Joe points out that Cars.com shows in the UI that there's been a price change.
Right.
And that might be why the smaller price change increments get more attention.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. And I honestly, I'm not, I haven't been up on my Cars.com UI. I thought that to be the case, and I'm glad that he could validate that for us.
Cool. Yeah. Lots of thanks to Joe Pastel, Uncle Joe, Machine Gun Joe. And so let's take one more question that we didn't really plan to go through today, but Jeff's not here to give me crap for asking it. It's one that means a lot to me. And I've always wondered if chasing appointments as a metric is really worth the effort that we put into it. So, do appointments close higher than non-appointments?
So this was the way that we did this analysis is we separated the leads by type. So we looked at leads that had an origination source of showroom versus everything else. And so of the showroom ones, the average, let me just pull it up so I can give you the average percent of the closing rate all across all dealers, everything was 26.4%. For non-showroom appointments. So let's make sure we understand exactly what this is. Somebody that did not originate from the showroom, so phone, internet, right, that had an appointment set. So at some point in the process, they had an appointment set. Of that population, what did they close at? It was 27.2. So almost a wash.
Wow. Well,
less than 1% difference, or just about a 1% difference.
Okay. I mean, I'd love to say that's a definitive, wow, okay, appointments and chasing after them isn't as important as we thought. There's probably some other aspects that we might need to take into account, but wow, I didn't think they'd be that close.
I mean, I almost I have an argument against that, right? So I say, what does that mean? Well, somebody that met the appointment criteria, they had to first provide contact information that we could engage with the customer. They had to answer the phone. We had to have a salesperson or a BDC agent that was skilled enough to convince them to say yes. So all that really is the people that allegedly agreed, because remember, this is in the CRM. How many appointments have we seen in the CRM that aren't really appointments? So of that population, people that have kind of met that criteria versus somebody walking in, I mean, I think it makes sense that they'd be pretty close, I think.
Yeah. A lot easier to get a sale out of somebody who's raised their hand as high as an appointment has.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, guys, we lost Jeff. And hopefully he's watching somewhere. They did some remodeling in the showroom and looks like they made some changes to the internet connection. So hopefully they get that sorted out before next Friday. And there's some more questions that are coming in on Facebook. We had some more questions that we posed to Jon, or DR Truth now. And we're going to post those in the forum, and we'll post a link to this broadcast as well, so you can rewatch it and pick up on anything that we might have said or said wrong, call us out. Last but not least, big thanks to Jon. And we look forward to pretty much having you as part of the Dealer Refresh team.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. I think you said it best. Dealer Refresh is the leading edge or bleeding edge, I think you call it, of, as a community, these are individuals that are passionate about improving themselves in their stores. I started on Dealer Refresh, I think in 2010, 2011, and blew my mind with just the level of communication that's on the site and the content that is produced. And my approach with this is just to try to answer some questions occasionally that can be a little bit tough, because we have this opportunity, I think, with the data together.
Well, we look forward to more truth from DR Truth. Find him in the forums. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks again, Jon.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Talk to you later.